Welcome to Voices. Voices is a talk show that is informative and provocative. And your host, Art Cunningham, keeps the conversation lively. Without further ado, your host, Art Cunningham.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to this week's edition of Voices. I'm Art Cunningham and thanks so much for spending the next 30 minutes with us on this edition of Voices, brought to you by the good folks at Insight News. In the recent years, I think you would agree that the governors of Minnesota have come from either the Democratic or the Republican Party. How would you consider a governor from another party, the Libertarian Party? Well, let's talk about it. Stay where you are. We will be right back. Eric Olson is my guest, who is a candidate for the governor of the state of Minnesota from the Libertarian Party. Eric, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks a lot.
Eric, let's get to the facts. And let's get this out on the table right away. Tell me, what are your chances? Are you serious? Or you just... you have a story to tell, and you're using this platform to do it?
What our goal is, of course, it'd be nice to win, but our chances of winning, there isn't one.
Okay.
The two-party system rules this state right now.
So why are you here?
My goal is to get 5% of the vote, and one vote in every county, because once we do that, we get major party status, which means we're involved in the primary and caucus system. In the next election, we get our entire slate of people is on the ballot, without having to go through the ballot access petition drive that we had to do to get me on the ballot.
And what difference does all of that make?
Then you change the debate. Rather than having an either or, you have another choice. You have more of a mix rather than saying, well, it's either this person or that person. A lot of times people find their choices quite distasteful. And it gives people another opportunity to hear another viewpoint, another way of viewing what is the role of government, what would somebody else do. The two-party system thrives on each other. They're going, well, it's either us or them, and they keep going back and forth. They want to keep the system the way it is. It's locked up right now.
How do libertarians differ from the Republican and the Democratic Party?
Well, the way the Democratic Party is, they view government as a problem solver, that government is here to take care of everybody's problems for them. We don't believe that government can solve everybody's problems. Utopia isn't an option. A Republican Party, on the other hand, they see government as a way to instill their traditions, giving their traditions the force of law. I don't believe that anybody's tradition should be given the force of law. I believe that the only true moral that we really have is to not harm the person or property of another. And that's where we're coming from. We're for more freedom, as far as economic freedom and civil liberties, too.
What percentage of voters in Minnesota are libertarians? Do you have any idea?
From what I've been told, if we just run just a candidate, and he doesn't do anything, just a paper candidate, we're going to get 2.2% of the vote. That's the historical percentage. So I don't know, we've increased the party a great deal because I've been a lot more active than anybody else has been up to this point. I don't know what the percentage is right now.
Now, Eric, you look as if you're about 29, 30, 31, something like that.
Right.
That's kind of young for a gubernatorialship, isn't it?
Well, I believe I'm still legal to be governor. I'm 31 years old, and to be perfectly honest, I've never run for public office before. Okay, I never even ran for student council before. And somebody's age, I don't think is necessarily that important. It's what is their viewpoint? What do they believe?
Why do you want to be governor, though, rather than the state senator or representative or on the council in your local community?
Well, I was asked by the treasurer of the party to run for governor because it's going to get us more exposure, get more people, get the idea out more. Because if I start on a very small level, you're only going to get the idea out to that small fraction of the population that's in your district, your particular district. This way, we can expand that idea across the state and hopefully get more people in other parts of the state more interested. We do have a lot of outstate support, too.
How about the demographics of your party? How is it, what's the composition?
Composition
In terms of age and economic levels and that sort of thing?
Well, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people that have been calling in and asking for information, almost half the people are small business owners. An unbelievably high percentage of people are small business owners.
Why do you suppose that's so?
I think it's because, well, I'm self-employed too, and I think it's because you have to write out checks to the Internal Revenue Service, and you see where, you know, how much money is going out. Unlike somebody who's being paid on a salary, you don't see that. You see, well, this is what I get to spend, usually at the end of the week. And small business people, they see all the regulations and all the government interference and all the taxation, and they get, I guess, more ticked off about it because they have to deal with it all the time.
Well, Eric, how do you differ from, campaign time comes and politicians make all kind of crazy promises that they can't keep, and I think sometimes have no intentions of keeping. But how do you differ from the two major candidates for governor?
The two major candidates for governor, I don't see that either of them has a philosophical base they're starting from. Like exactly what you just said, they'll say anything to get elected. They don't intend to follow through. With the Libertarian Party, with Libertarian candidates, you know where they stand, and they might not give you the exact answer to a specific issue because you can't always ask people directly, but you know pretty much how they're going to vote and what they're going to vote on and what they're going to endorse. And that's what I see as the main difference. I see Arnie Carlson a lot of the times playing both sides. You know, he'll try to appease anybody who will get him more votes and who can get him more money. And the same goes with John Marty, too.
But Eric, it seems to me if you aren't going to be able to make a major difference in what's going on, if you don't have the numbers, then I think that votes make a difference. And it seems to me if you aren't going to be able to make a difference at the polls or the way the government, whether it's local, state, or national government, operates, what difference does all the noise you make make?
You got to start somewhere, and you got to try. You have to try. In New Hampshire, for instance, Libertarian Party has been out there and been more active out there. They have 109 people running for public office in New Hampshire right now. We just don't have that going on here in Minnesota.
How many do we have running for? Are you the only Libertarian?
I am it right now.
Who is your lieutenant governor?
Michael Strand is his name. He's a friend of mine from college, and he's the first person that I really talked at great length with about actually the Libertarian Party, because I talked to him about things I agreed with and disagreed with in the government, and he's the one who kind of pointed me in that direction, and I joined the party about 5 years ago because of it.
Does your party or your campaign have a centerpiece or platform that you are offering those persons who may want to consider voting for you?
Yes. The main thing that most people are concerned with, of course, is taxes. Okay? You can't just unilaterally cut taxes. You have to cut the spending first. And the best way to do that is through privatizing as many government services as possible. Anything from road work to social work and everything in between. If we get the private sector does things more efficiently and more effectively than the government does. And we start farming these things out more, you'll see that our costs will start to decrease. That would be the first step. The second step in cutting costs is to introduce sunset legislation so that every 3 or 5 years, any particular program has to meet its goals that it's set up for itself, and if it doesn't, it ceases to exist. Right now, you set up a government program, it will last forever. Those are a couple of the main things right now.
But Eric, I'm sure you agree that to cut taxes is not new. All the politicians want to cut taxes. It seems to me what I hear you saying is the way in which the taxes are
right. It's easy to say, I'm going to cut taxes, but they don't tell you how they're going to do it. The way I view government is like a 1,000-pound couch potato, right? You want it to lose weight, but you're not going to hack off an arm. What you want to do is get it up and moving, get it walking, get it running. That's what competition can do to government. It's working in New Zealand, for instance. It's working in Indianapolis, and it will work here too. We just have to get that couch potato up and moving again.
Do you know of any state that has seriously considered the privatization of the services?
The only one that's really gone gung-ho on it is not the state of Indiana, but Indianapolis, the city itself, has done that a great deal and cut costs tremendously and actually increased service to its constituents, too.
Mm-hmm. Eric, I want to ask you, I have a list of issues. You got into the privatization, and I suppose, I guess we could say a bit more about that, but I have a laundry list of issues here I want to ask you about. You've dealt with the AIDS thing. What do you see as the issue that concerns the voter in '94?
Personally, I don't see that there is a particular issue. I don't hear like there's one thing that 80% of the voters want to see. There are a couple of minor things, but the way people vote is they vote in their own self-interest. They vote for their own special interests. And I would like to make people broaden their idea. Instead of going, I want, this particular subsidy for this particular thing. Let's think about what is the philosophy of government. What should government do and what shouldn't government do?
Well, let me ask you this then. Are there any three things that you hear voters that are at the top of the voters' want list?
Term limits is number one.
Term limits?
Yes. You've got last poll I saw, 80% of the people would like to see term limits here, but right now, the government itself is taking our own tax money to fight us in court for the opportunity to even vote on term limits, which is absurd.
What is your position on term limits? That's one of the things I was going to ask you about.
Well, the party itself doesn't take a position on it. I do. I don't think that the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, even considered that there would be such a thing as a professional political class. That's why term limits weren't written in initially. Yeah. I don't think that people should be working for the government and be politicians their whole lives.
So you're for term limits?
Absolutely.
You don't think that whenever election time comes is enough of a limit?
The Democrats and Republicans have a total stranglehold on this system. I've seen it for the first, I never really saw it up until I've been trying to do this right now.
But they don't tell people how to vote when they don't force people to vote or give it away when they go in the booth.
If that's the only way, if the only way you get information is either about Democrats or Republicans, and that's the only information you ever get, how do you have a way of making an informed choice?
But if they're dissatisfied with a given office holder, when election time comes, isn't that enough of a limit for the voters to say we've had enough, out, no more?
And we're probably going to see a lot of that this time around. People are really, really getting ticked off at the incumbent politicians, and I think we're going to see a huge turnover. Yeah. But the thing is, you're just turning over from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican. You're not turning over to any other ideas out there.
But isn't that the voter's choice?
Oh, the voter always has a choice, but can the voter be informed when they're not given the information, when things are not published, when the system is set up? Like this primary system that we have is a joke. I went down to the grade school right down the street from my block to vote in the primary. Now, the primary, you're not voting for anybody for any office. You're voting for somebody that will then be on the ballot, or you want somebody you want to be on the ballot. Now, that's my tax dollars that are supporting that school. Indirectly, I'm supporting with my tax dollars two political parties I disagree with. That's just one example of the way that people don't get the information that they need, and they can't get it because the stranglehold that they have on the system, Republicans and Democrats.
But doesn't the voter ultimately have the responsibility to elect people that serve their purpose?
That's what the whole point of a democratic republic is. You elect people in that will serve you. Yes.
So that if I vote for the person that serves my purpose, or vote that person in or out, it seems to me that would be enough term limit, wouldn't it?
But do you have an informed decision? Do you have a choice? If it's either or, you've got two parties running the system.
Isn't it my responsibility?
You have a choice.
Isn't that to be informed? Is my responsibility? Isn't it, as a voting citizen?
Right. Absolutely, it's your responsibility. If nothing gets published, well, I'll give you a couple for instances, okay? Mm-hmm. I was on the ballot. I was kind of excited the next day. I flipped open to page 2B because the Star Tribune said I'm going to be on, a full list of candidates on the ballot. Yeah. My name wasn't there. I went and did a governor's candidates forum. I flipped open again to page 2B. only the Democrats and Republicans were listed there. There were 3 so-called third-party candidates. Now, how are you going to make an informed decision if you're not given the information?
Eric Olson is my guest. Eric is the candidate for governor of the state of Minnesota from the Libertarian Party. When we come back, we're going to talk about, we're going to ask Eric his position on same-sex marriages and war on drugs and Minnesota Care, initiative and referendum, tax credit, and a number of other issues. We will be right back. Stay where you are.
In a life-threatening emergency, you should know what to do. Say a loved one exhibits unusual symptoms. The first thing to do is...
Clear!
No. The first thing to do...
Oh! Tourniquet!
No! The first thing you do is pick up the phone and dial your emergency number.
Call 911 first.
Right.
How about mouth-to-mouth?
I don't think so. To learn more about life-saving techniques, contact your Red Cross.
And we're back. Eric Olson from the Libertarian Party is my guest. He's a candidate for the governor of the state of Minnesota. Before I go back to my guest, let me remind you that if you have an idea or an organization that you wish to showcase, or an issue you'd like for us to pursue here on Voices, give us a call or drop us a line. And at the end of the show, we'll tell you just how to do that. Back to my guest. Eric, abortion has been tossed around for a long time. Some are hoping that it will go away. I'm not sure that it will. What's your position? What's the Libertarians' position on abortion?
My position is that it's a woman's right to choose what she wants to do with her own body. Until this fetus is viable outside of the womb, it is part of the mother, and the mother has the choice what to do.
Eric, same-sex marriages.
Okay. Before I really get into that, I want to explain just kind of an overview of the idea behind the Libertarian Party. The idea is that you own yourself, you own your property, you own the fruits of your labor. Should be able to do with those things whatever you choose to do until you physically harm the person or property of another. Now, that said, if we decide to get married, okay, we're not harming anybody else. There's no reason that we shouldn't have that type of a contract. I got a very close friend who, he's in a situation where he can't be legally bound to his mate. I think that's absurd. They're not hurting anybody else. In fact, he's one of the nicest guys I know. But they can't do that. That seems ridiculous to me.
So you are in favor of same-sex marriages?
Yes, I have no problem with that at all.
Do they get the same benefits as traditional marriage couples?
Yes. We're going at it backwards, I think, when we get the cart before the horse here, when that domestic partners ordinance in Minneapolis is saying, well, they should have all the benefits of being married, but there isn't that legally binding contract first. See, so we're going at it backwards. I mean, if that's really what the gay and lesbian community wants, they should say, this is what we're working for first, and then all the other benefits trail off from that. But saying we want this domestic partners ordinance first, it's backwards.
Have you been in any debates with any of the other major candidates?
Yeah, I've done some of the governor's forums with them, yes.
I see. Let's move on to another position, the war on drugs.
All right.
What about it?
I think the war on drugs, we have to find some way to declare a truce on this war on drugs. It's killing people. There was 2 people in North Minneapolis that they popped a flashbang grenade in their house. This was a couple of years ago. Smalley and Weiss, I think, were their names. They ended up getting killed in this war on drugs. When do we say we've had enough collateral damage, we have to find some better way to deal with the situation? I think that the drug problem is more of a health care issue. It's not a crime problem. And also getting back to the idea of self-ownership. I own my own body. If I choose to poison my body, that's my choice. You shouldn't come at me with a gun and say, I'm not going to let you poison your own body. I don't think that that's the proper role of government to be doing that.
But doesn't the use of drugs create a lot of other problems on the system?
There are the practical problems that occur are due mostly to the fact that drugs are illegal in the first place.
Yeah.
People, because the cost of drugs is so high, end up going out and stealing to get their fix. When's the last time competing liquor store owners shot it out in the street? During Prohibition. That's why we're having people shooting each other in the street now today. Now we have to find a different way to address this problem. The way we're doing it now is costing us billions of dollars, about $50 billion a year as far as the enforcement costs are concerned. We're losing about $150 billion in tax revenue. 60% of our federal prisoners are in on drug charges. They have not harmed the person or property of another. I don't think that they're criminals if they have not harmed the person or property of another. 60% of our federal prisoners are in on drug charges. 25% of our state prisoners.
Why do you think they're in prison?
They're in prison for dealing a commodity that the government says, no, you shouldn't do that, or taking that commodity themselves.
Isn't that a crime against society?
I don't believe in crimes against society. I believe in crimes against individuals. It's a different way of looking at it.
How about gun control?
I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment. I believe the Second Amendment is the linchpin to the Bill of Rights. If you don't have the right to defend yourself, everything else is just written on a piece of paper, and it's pretty worthless. I'm a strong proponent of Second Amendment rights.
Eric, the Second Amendment rights, some say, has been abused and misused. Do I hear you saying, quite frankly, that anyone who wants to own a gun should be able to own one?
Convicted felons and crazy people obviously shouldn't, but anybody else should, yes. In fact, they changed the concealed carry law in Florida in 1987, so that anybody who wanted didn't have to prove that they really needed to carry a gun, could carry one. Murder rate since 1987 has gone down 21% in Florida, while it's gone up 12% in the rest of the country. And the reason that you saw, remember the German tourists getting murdered in Florida? It's because criminals know if you got Florida plates, you could possibly have a gun. So they're going after the people with the Enterprise rent-a-car in the back of their car. That's how come those tourists were attacked specifically, because they were known to not be armed.
Do you have a problem with the youngsters carrying guns?
Absolutely.
How do we differentiate between the youngsters who carry guns and other people who carry guns?
Until you reach the age of majority,
Yeah.
okay, that's when you can start to have all these choices of adulthood, okay? Before that point, it's something where unless there is some parental or adult supervision, and I do believe in, hey, train kids to use guns. Kids that watch TV, they end up getting a false idea of what guns are and what they're for. I'm for training children, that's fine, but until you reach the age of majority, you can't just carry a gun with you.
So you oppose kids carrying guns?
Absolutely.
But adults, after you reach the age of majority, you support the notion of carrying guns.
Fine.
So it would not bother you if every adult walking down the streets of Minneapolis or the metropolitan area carried a gun?
No.
You suggest that would decrease crime?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. What I'd like to see, however, we make that change. We have mandatory minimum sentences for drug laws now. I want a mandatory minimum sentence for somebody who uses a firearm in commission of a crime. You use a gun to commit a crime, you will go to jail for 10 years.
No question.
Minimum. You will go to jail. I don't care. There's some guy I read about in the paper, murdered his wife. He's going to be in jail for 1.5 years. I think that's ridiculous. I think that guy should be in jail for at least 10 years and he used a gun in commission of that crime.
How about parole? You support that idea? I understand that there's some talk about parole and I'm forgetting. But your position on the parole?
Well, of course, you have to let people out sometimes, and when they're done serving their time. But
10 years.
10
years means 10 years or not?
As far as that particular law, 10 years is 10 years. You do not, absolutely not, get out on parole before that time. Mm-hmm. The crimes that I feel are more amenable to paroling are those not the crimes against persons, but crimes against property. Yeah. Burglaries, larcenies, things like that. People like that are more amenable to parole. I would be more likely to let a person like that out on parole than somebody who raped a woman or assaulted somebody or shot somebody. Those people, I'd take a step back and say, hold on a second, I don't necessarily want to parole these people, but the property crime people, I don't have as much of a problem with paroling.
If you're just tuning in, you're viewing my conversation with Eric Olson, who is the candidate for the governor of Minnesota from the Libertarian Party. Eric, we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Quickly, welfare reform.
What we need to do is reform it, I think, starting from the top down. We have to adjust the way a social worker looks at their job. We have to privatize social work also, because right now, the more people that are asking you for things, if you're in the social worker in a welfare agency, the more power, prestige, pay, and perks you end up with. We have to do is change their motivation to say, you want to run a social work company for welfare? We say, we're going to give you X number of people, and you will get a bonus based on that number of people who are actually self-sufficient at the end of that year. Change the motivation from the top. I think that'd be a good way to start.
How about the size of the legislature? Would you recommend any changes there?
In fact, I called my state senator on this, and of course she disagreed with me, because I would like to see a unicameral legislature for a couple of reasons. Number one, the cost. We have 2 branches, it costs a lot more. Number 2, and more important, accountability. Because right now, you're a state rep, you can say, well, it's, the Senate made all these changes. Okay, you can duck your responsibility at that point. When you have only 1 house, you can't duck responsibility as easily.
Initiative and referendum.
All for it. Any way that we can get people more in control of the government, I'm for it.
Okay. Tell me, we have about a minute left, Eric. In terms of contacting your campaign office for funds, maybe you don't need money, or volunteers or whatever.
We need all we can get.
Give us a number.
223-0995. And if there are any specific issue papers you want, just let us know. We'll get those out to you. Of course, we need volunteers. We need money. We're broke. Yeah, 223-0995 is the number to call. And just leave a message, and we'll get back to you, for sure.
All right. Eric Olson, candidate for the state of Minnesota from the Libertarian Party, has been my guest. Eric, thank you much.
All right, thank
I'm
you.
glad you were here.
Yeah.
Good luck. And if you win, you write to Voices, our address and our number are?
For information, write to Voices with Art Cunningham, in care of Northwest Community Television, 6900 Winnetka Avenue North, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, 55428. For viewer response and programs